Okay, so let's discuss images in poetry. We've discussed images in literature, short stories, so let's discuss images in poetry. Poetry appeals to the senses. It is very distilled, it's distilled down to the basics. There's no time for exposition as there is in a novel or a short story, so they have to make things happen quickly, make you understand what they're wanting to say very quickly because they have so many fewer words. And therefore it appeals more directly to the senses, less to the whole, like when you have exposition and you're explaining things and people can think things through as they're reading. In this case, you're going to go directly to the senses a little bit more, and you're probably going to stop and think it through after you've read it or as you read it a second or third time. The appeal is usually visual, kind of painting pictures for you, but it can appeal to other senses such as hearing or smelling. The poet can be using words to describe these other senses. So here we have this poem by William Carlos Williams, cleverly named poem. Now, William Carlos Williams was a Pulitzer Prize winner, as well as the Poet Laureate of the United States, and he won a National Book Award. He is considered in the school of modernism. He's a modernist, and so he also was part of a group of poets that are called imagists. They kind of rejected the poetic diction of earlier times when you may think that things were a little bit more obscure. You kind of had to dig them out a little bit more. They wanted very clear, sharp language, precision of the imagery. And as you can see, as you read this, the cat, it's a very clear picture. As the cat climbed over the top of the jam closet, first the right foot carefully, then the hind foot stepped down into the pit of the empty flower pot. Can't you just imagine this cat stepping over things as he's going through here? And notice there's no period at the end. This was a choice that he made. But this is a much clearer, more precise picture of what Williams wanted to say than maybe some of the other poets that you've been reading. Now here we have a poem by Walt Whitman that appeals to a number of senses and also sets a mood kind of as an image. He is talking about the cavalry crossing a ford. He's talking about the Civil War. Whitman was writing during the Civil War and acted as a nurse. So you can see here a line in long array where they wind betwixt green islands. They take a serpentine course, their arms flash in the sun. Hark to the musical clank. There we have some sound imagery. Behold the silvery river, in it the splashing horses loitering stop to drink. Behold the brown-faced men, each group, each person a picture. The negligent rest on the saddles. Some emerge on the opposite bank, others are just entering the ford. While scarlet and blue and snowy white, the guidon flags flutter gaily in the wind. Now we're talking about long lines of men crossing a ford. Notice the long lines in the poetry. Whitman is known for this, but also doesn't it help kind of set that picture of those long lines of men? And for me, this does set more than just a picture, because it seems to me as we talk about these brown-faced men kind of negligent on their saddles, they're probably tired. They've been in battle. They're probably quiet. We can hear the sounds of the horses. We can kind of hear probably their guns or something flashing that are flashing in the sun, their arms, and then clanking against things. But I can really get this setting of just kind of this long line of very tired men with these very small sounds as they cross this river. So this one, again, creates quite the picture. Now, this is the second stanza of a really fun poem. It's giving us a strong visual image of an abstract concept, because this is talking about what poetry should do. Poetry should ride the bus. Poetry should wear bright red lipstick and practice kisses in the mirror. for all the fine young men with fades shooting craps around the corner. So man, you can really picture this, wearing bright red lipstick and practicing kisses in the mirror, and these fine young men with fades shooting craps around the corner. But it's describing an abstract concept, the construct of poetry. This is what poetry should do for us. So it's interesting how they can use these very literal images to talk about an abstract concept. Now here we have a poem that is by another poet laureate, Robert Frost. The wayfarer, perceiving the pathway to truth, was struck with astonishment. It was thickly grown with weeds. Ha, he said, I see that none has passed here in a long time. Later he saw that each weed was a singular knife. Well, he mumbled at last, doubtless there are other roads. Now this is very visual, and yet he's making a very philosophical statement with it. We have this pathway to truth, thickly grown with weeds. Ah, he says, none have passed here. So he's making a comment about how few people are really willing to go down the pathway to truth, really willing to seek out the truth. And then later he's making the comment that since he sees each weed was a knife, he's going to take a different road. That road to truth is far too difficult. But what a visual picture, again, of a very philosophical statement. You can see how poetry is so distilled down that they use these images to create something that maybe a philosopher would have written a whole book on.